Good evening, my friends. This is VJ Franz K. You're used to me doing videos with synthesizers and drum machines, but I wanted to cover another subject which I've been into for a very long time. Actually, since before I got my first synthesizer. Art and drawing. I wanted to present some of my favorite drawing tools. An introduction to brush pens. You would normally think you would have to choose between using a brush or a pen. But these brush pens are a combination of the two, some of the best features of both of them. They're convenient like a pen. The ink, doesn't go everywhere. But they also have the expressivity of a brush. You can get a thick, wide line with them, and then instantly go down with a lighter touch to this very thin, fine point, just using the little end of the brush. And this takes a little practice, but you'll be used to it very soon. So I'm going to show you a few things about these, and also which kinds to use. Another thing to notice is that different pens have different amounts of bleed through from the back. So be wary of what pens and what paper work well together and how much bleed through you get. You may actually put an extra page underneath a page that you're drawing so that you don't get so much bleed through. So we'll quickly go through a history of writing pens. Most of you probably started with one of these, a ballpoint or stick pen as they call it. The basic sort of writing that you'll do on schoolwork or on forms, just a straight line of a single color. I have one friend who is an amazing artist who can get a lot of gradation by doing different pressure on these, but that takes a lot of practice and technique. It's something like this, where you press less and sort of cover an area there to give you a kind of gray. Some more advanced styles and a few different colors, like this red here, but still it's fairly basic. Most of these pens are either black or blue, or some are red. You can't get a thick line out of this. The evolution of the pen is the marker. Marker is a wide, often colorful line, and this is a watercolor marker, so it isn't as permanent as a, quote, permanent marker. Most of the professional markers are permanent markers just because the color, I guess, is a little bit richer. These are good for kids because they're non-toxic. Fill in an area by doing these lines here. And you can get a thick line by using the side of it. And, if you try hard, you can still get a variation by using the very tip or then getting a little bit wider. But to pull off those tricks like I was doing with the brush pen would be there. It's quite difficult to do that because this tip is not flexible, so you can't lean on it as easily to change from the thick to thin stroke. Next, in the world of markers, we have the fine point felt tip. This is a Faber-Castell, and actually, it ends up looking similar to the ballpoint, but it is a small felt tip marker, so for fine work. A name I'm sure you heard, it's almost synonymous with the word marker. It's Sharpie, a very popular brand that's been around for a long time. And these are one of the most popular brands of permanent markers. And here's a fine point Sharpie. The medium point is the most common type of Sharpie that you have out there. So then the marker sort of grew up, and these art style markers, they're special markers for art, and they do cost more. So you don't want random people just using your art markers because they might destroy them. Here is a brush marker from Faber-Castell, and this is called a Pitt brush marker. It's marked with a B there on the top. Yes, you notice I am left-handed, like a lot of artists are. So you can get a thin line to a wide line, and you notice the ink is, high quality, sort of uniform color, and it's good, and these come in every color of the rainbow, of course. So I like the Pitt markers, but honestly the brush can't get quite wide enough for my taste at its widest, and yeah, so they're not my favorite brand, though I do like them, and I have a few. Another kind of art marker are these sort of dual brush style. Now this is not a Tombow, but it's a lot like a Tombow. This one is, Zig. Launch every Zig, right? Just like on the Zero Wing. All your base belong to us. All your markers now belong to us. This one has a fine sort of medium weight felt tip on one end, which is handy, and then on the other end you turn it around, and both of these are fed from the same ink reservoir inside. It's a large piece of felt that contains a lot of ink. And then on the other side you can see this brush. The evolution of the brush pen continues. This one is a little bit old, so you notice the tip is not as sharp as it is. So a tip for you using brush pens, but you see still I can get the wide and the narrow. Oops. See, while talking and writing you can write the wrong thing. There it is, evolution. So yeah, the dual brush style. Even more brush pens. Here's an interesting type. Now it's sort of a watercolor ink. The brush has a squeezable handle that contains a reservoir of ink. And this is called a Paintastic marker. But a lot of these markers have, different brands' version of a very similar or even nearly identical pen that comes from, different companies. Maybe loaded with different ink, but I've seen this body used both for these Elmer's Paintastic Kids markers as well as, art markers, and who knows, they may have a different ink inside. But these Paintastics are pretty cool. But it's very, very much like a real brush. And actually, you can dip this in ink or paint after it runs dry and still use it. Or, if you DIY, you can refill these reservoirs and use them again. Though, be careful how you seal it up, because they can leak quite a bit. This ink gets all over the place if you're not careful. But it is fast drying, and I compared it with my painter friends, and we couldn't decide exactly what it is. It's some sort of special ink that's somewhere between watercolor and ink. Anyway, have had a lot of fun with these Paintastics. Get them if you can. There are other brands out there too. Alright, here's a pro tip for you. Fabric markers can often be a less expensive source of brush pens. And this is the case with the fairly new stained markers from Sharpie. It's a special formula. It's different than the standard markers, and actually this is my favorite kind of Sharpie that they've ever invented. It's a nice brush tip. You can get from narrow to wide lines on it, and the color is pretty good, and they come in a multi-pack of 12, even though on these multi-packs they definitely should include 2 black markers, or maybe 3 for all of the rest of the colors, because you always run out of the black for outlining before you run out of the other colors. So that would be very nice. But you can always order them online, and they have more options than they may have in the store. So these are very cool stained markers from Sharpie. Also, I might mention that the stained markers, they do stain clothing, so you've got to be careful. They will They will stain your hands, but they will also stain your clothing, carpet, and other things like that because they are designed to be used on fabric. So they will get on your fabric and they will stay there. So just be very careful. And you may have to have an adult's permission to buy these if you're not yet 18 or 21. I think it was 18 that they check at the counter sometimes for these. Don't tag random things, people. Do your work in a book or on a canvas or something like that. Make something really cool instead of messing up people's walls who don't want to have them. Anyway, stained markers by Sharpie, very good. I'm going to unbox a pack of these later on, so stay tuned. And then here is another marker by Sharpie. I'm not sure if these came out before or after the stained markers, but this is a Sharpie Brush. And it is the standard Sharpie ink, but with this special flexible brush tip. And so these are some of the widest markers that you can get. See how wide that line is. You know, you can do really dramatic thick to thin scroll work and stuff like that, like fire or laser beams or explosions or all that sci-fi stuff you might want to draw, or or flowers. You can do what you want. Since it is the regular formula Sharpie ink, yes, these do smell strongly, and if you don't like that smell or it gives you a headache, draw in a well-ventilated area. Now that I've completed my evolutionary diagram for the moment, we'll take it out and you can see the bleed-through factor of these different markers. Now, the bleed-through on the Sharpie brush is very, very thick. So there's a lot of bleed-through. And in fact, for some marker coloring techniques, I've even read that you purposefully color on the back of the page and then you let some of that ink come through. There's the green there. See, they bleed a lot, even though that's a nice line. Now you notice the Sharpie, the stained by Sharpie, they don't bleed through that much. Only these little points where the ink rests an extra long time, it may soak through. But otherwise, that's pretty good. Oh yes, you notice the Paintastic marker here. If you lay it on pretty thickly like I did, it will soak through. And that's where some of the ink is leaked onto the tip there. The rest of the markers are pretty good about not going through, and of course permanent markers tend to bleed more than watercolor markers do.